Namaste, viewers. Welcome to another exciting episode, the 125th episode of Words of Wisdom Gyan Ganga. We are excited to have the Shri Rajiv Malhotra ji, and we have obviously we have Dr. Swamy here, and we're going to talk about a very important hot topic today, which is Hinduphobia in U.S. universities. As you all know, that there is a conference that's being planned on September 11th. It's called Dismantling Global Hindutva. And we have Rajiv ji and Dr. Swamy to discuss that today. And before we go on to the quick program, I'll just make a quick announcement. This program, in addition to being available on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, is also now available as a podcast. The podcast is going to be available after the program on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify. So you could pretty much search on any of them. Just go for search for VHS India. You'll be able to see and you listen to the program as a podcast as well. So without much delay, I'm just going to jump into the program. So Dr. Swamy and Rajiv ji, welcome to the program. So we'll start with a quick introduction. As usual, the program format is that Dr. Swamy talks first, and then we have our guest who's going to take the lead and be the star of the show, and then there'll be a discussion. Over to you, Dr. Swamy.
Thank you very much. It's for me a great pleasure that Rajiv Malhotra has agreed to come on our program, on the 125th program. Rajiv Malhotra is a pioneer. I am an eyewitness what the United States situation was. All the rubbish that used to be said against Hinduism, there was never a challenge. And the challenge I meant people who articulate and speak in the same idiom as them and defeat them in their own idiom. And the first person who emerged on the scene was Rajiv Malhotra and his huge book, which is now the bestseller for years and years. It's called Breaking India. And he spoke about all the conspiracies. And of course, since then, he has written a large number of books. I remember Swami Dayanand Saraswati asking me about him and said, how can I get to meet him? And ultimately, not only Dayanand Saraswati met him, but also his books, in large numbers, he distributed all over the country. So we have him today on a topic which has now become very crucial for all thinking Indians to know and analyze and take countermeasures. And that is the question of how to deal with Hinduphobia, which is developing in the West. What is Hinduphobia? And what is this conference that has been set up? Who has set up this conference? I don't know whether Rajiv Malhotra knows, but I certainly have searched and I found that the organizers' names don't appear anywhere. Only the participants' names appear. And second, they claimed a series of universities with their insignia as supporting them. And now, one by one, they're all disowning. We have nothing to do with that. These individuals are, doing it on their own. And such a discredited set of people, who are they and what are they trying to say? There are five issues that I'll say very briefly and then hand it over to Rajiv Malhotra, whom I know that the entire audience is looking forward to hearing him. He's now a cult figure, I might say, in India. Of course, in America, everybody knows him anyway. And people also find him a bit they get frightened of him. They don't want to be in any conference where he is. But in India, he's revered. He's considered a great pioneer. He's considered a great defender of Indian values. So I will pose 5 questions and then hand it over to him. And towards the end, of course, after he's finished speaking, we will have some questions for him from our panel. The question now is, what is it that they are opposing? They are opposing the global phenomenon of Hindutva. In other words, they are acknowledging that Hindutva is a global phenomenon. It's a huge development, and it's only 20 years. They also said, secondly, that Hindutva is the most significant threat to Hinduism's pluralist ethos. It brings tears to my eyes. They're concerned with Hinduism's pluralist ethos and says Hindutva is the most significant threat. So what is this Hindutva? That also we'd like Rajiv Gandhi to Rajiv Malhotra to put it across to us so that we can all of us understand very clearly. Third thing is they say the Indian government is of Hindu supremacist regime and is in power in India. That's another threat. Who are they talking about? In fact, I would say our present government in power is highly diluted. We want them to do many more things. And even this is defined as a Hindu supremacist regime. Fourth issue is that the conference supporters state that they will scrutinize official and unofficial policies to create with impunity for Hindutva violence and backed by massive propaganda machinery. My God, I mean, they make us out to be something that I never thought we were. And in one sense, quite impressed, where I consider this as a compliment coming from them. And finally, many universities have made it clear that they don't support this conference. So there's been a fraud committed on large number of people to attract them to come to the university, to the conference on the grounds that these universities were supporting. So over to you, Rajiv Malhotra. We are so pleased to have you today, and we look forward to hearing you, and we want you to come more often to keep us abreast of how you are changing the entire narrative in the United States for Hindus who can now look up and with confidence and go forward. Over to you, Rajiv Malhotra.
Thank you, Dr. Swamy. It's always been a pleasure to discuss with you. And I think you are one of the very few individuals with a historical perspective because you've tracked this phenomenon for a long time. We've gotten to know each other. So I'm glad that this is being, chaired by you. And namaste to everybody. I just want to give a historical perspective. A lot of people sort of mistakenly kind of trivialize the work done by saying, okay, Rajiv coined the term Hinduphobia, and then somebody says, oh, somebody had used it before. It's not about coining a term. Dr. Swamy's legacy of one of his many things of fighting corruption is not about coining the term corruption, but actually discovering the corruption, hunting it down, finding who the culprits are, what are the nexuses, what is the methodology. In other words, really scientifically uncovering a syndrome is important, not what you call it and who called it. So Hinduphobia is a term that one or two people may have used it as early as 1842. But let me tell you, the Hinduphobia in the American Academy, which is what I'm talking about, did not exist at that time. Did not even exist. So whatever the term was used for was something else, not the syndrome we are dealing with today. The syndrome we are dealing with today started when European Indology moved to the United States and became South Asian Studies. And the United States government created the term South Asian Studies. A certain article of was enacted in the Congress to fund it. And it was important that since the British Empire was falling apart, United States should take the lead in controlling the discourse. This is what led to the rise to the creation of Ford Foundation, various other mechanisms. The study of more than 30 universities were funded by the US government to start this South Asian studies. So that is a new lens. It is not the old lens of the British Empire. It's a new lens was started. In the earlier study of India, there was a lot of prejudice, but it was of a different kind. It was only from Christian type people and the British rulers wanting to belittle Hindus. But the Americanization of the study of India is a very new phenomenon. I've written about it, 5 waves of Indology. So these 5 waves start with Marxism being exported to India as a way to, as a lens to study India. And of course, when you study Hindu Dharma through Marxism, it's distorted. Then this whole post-colonial lens was another one. And then this subaltern studies was another one. And then this postmodernism and so on. So every few years after independence, a new methodology and how to study India was developed in the West. And a lot of Indians who are called sepoys got indoctrinated in this. Some of them were brought to the US. Many of them were students of Romila Thapar and Irfan Habib and those kind of people. And then they were sent back to India. And then in India, those people started reproducing more of the same kind. And now we are into the third or fourth generation of these people. And they call themselves liberals, which it is hardly liberating to think like that. They call themselves left. I'm not too pleased with the word left or right as sort of bifurcating the discourse, but that's how they are called. So this liberal left in India and managed from the United States largely in terms of funding, in terms of the most prestigious journals and conferences where they want to present, in terms of who tutors them, in terms of who protects them legally, who gives them guidance, who trains them. It's sort of headquartered here. It's a global nexus. So this has been a syndrome, I call it, that I have studied. Now there's a history behind my study of it. In the 1990s, when I started my Infinity Foundation, I didn't know these things. I was giving grants, a few $1 million worth of grants to these people before I understood what they were up to. And at that time, they welcomed me as a great hero. I have letters from Dean of Harvard. I have letters from all sorts of people in various universities, department head of political science in Princeton, Columbia University, in collaboration with me, accepted a 6-figure grant to teach stuff. So I realized, because I'm a very active donor. I was a very active donor, not just writing a check for getting accolades and getting my name and face in the newsletter of the school or the college. I wanted to actually understand, and I wanted to engage, because I come from a point of view of a knowledgeable person. And I found that when I started looking at the dissertations they produced, the conferences they produced, and the whole discourse, I didn't find it acceptable at all. And I thought that this is free market thinking, and this is freedom of thought. And so I thought I'll also have views, and they will welcome it. And I found that as I raised issues, once they realized I'm not going to go away, and once they realized that I'm serious and I have lots of important things to say, they couldn't answer those questions. They couldn't answer my pointing out errors, my pointing out biases. They could not answer that. And so they started saying, well, give us your money, but don't interfere. No way. So the more I got into it, the more it became clear that we were on a collision course. So it was very, in many cases, I sponsored Indology Roundtable at Harvard 3 years in a row. And I was the only Indian sitting in the audience and then on the podium and raising my hand and saying, whenever they would say something, I would have my reaction to it. I sponsored so many things. The American Academy of Religion invited me to a special event where I was sort of the person, they were the only person representing who was a practicing Hindu. All the rest were Westerners and Indian sepoys who were accusing Hinduism. So I took them on. So this one person taking on a whole mechanism became something that they got concerned about. They started targeting me. They started attacking me. Until then, there was no following from the Indian side. VHP wrote a letter to me saying, we don't think there is any such problem, because when we go to America, the temples are flourishing and we can go to Harvard and give a talk. And I told them, I'm not talking about what the discourse is in the temple. I'm not talking about that. And as far as discourse in the university is concerned, there is something which is official curriculum. You're not into that. There is no Hindu gurus books being taught there. You're talking about giving an evening lecture. That evening lecture, anybody can rent a hall and give an evening lecture. And that is not what the curriculum is. I'm talking about the actual curriculum and what they consider to be real knowledge. What you are giving an evening talk doesn't count. So it wasn't they weren't even informed. Our people, the gurus, were not interested in getting involved in this. In fact, gurus would not want to entertain me as a speaker in most temples. They would say, if Rajiv Malhotra comes, it'll be controversial. We don't want to stir up controversy. So our temple is not wanting me to be involved. So I would if I'd go to the RSS people, they were not even involved in this. They didn't understand it. They were either they would claim that we are doing so well, we are this 5,000-year-old civilization, and we have this and that going, but they were not realizing that I'm talking about a particular kind of discourse, which is very intellectual, which is very scholarly, and they ought to read about it. It is not something you can comment unless you are well read, and they were not well read on this topic. Then I went to the government, the consulates, and with limited exceptions, few exceptions, they were not interested. It was too political. Of course, the industrialists, the businessmen, very successful Indians here, Hotel Association of Indians, all kinds of Indian Medical Association, not interested in taking up the topic because they wanted to stick to, let's make our money, let's not rock the boat. So this is the environment I was in. And so I started understanding systematically, how is this India studies operating? Where are the centers? Where are the institutions? So I studied universities and looked at every dissertation coming out on Hinduism, whether it's religious studies or anthropology or social studies or history department or political science. I made a database of who's who in the study of India. And at that time, there were 2,000 people on different faculties, postdocs who were studying India. Then I found seminaries. One of the biggest seminaries in the world, Christian seminaries, is right here in Princeton. And I would go there whenever there was anything to do with India, culture, whatever. I would sit there and understand what are they up to. And I realized that they are systematically studying Hindu Dharma as something that they have to counter. Then I found that Islamic groups, this is long before 9/11. And after 9/11, they got even more emboldened. But Islamic groups were involved. Kashmir separatists, Khalistanis were involved. And, it was common to find an Indian diplomat or dignitary coming and addressing, one of these Ivy Leagues with great pomp and glory. And then there would be all these Khalistanis or Kashmir separatists, heckling from the back. And our people didn't know what's going on. They had no idea of this syndrome. Call it, if you want to understand a disease, you understand its mechanism, how it replicates, what is its raw material, which organs it works on, and so on. You have to understand the mechanisms of a disease. So I was, in a sense, studying that. I then after Bill Clinton introduced the Religious Freedom Act after 2000. And in the Religious Freedom Act, they said that there'll be an organization reporting to the White House and to the US Congress to monitor religious freedom all over the world, except United States. This is very interesting. And this is called the US Commission on International Religious Freedom, USCIRF. The very first meeting they had, I went there. There was only one other Indian, and we heard their hearing, and we raised our hands and objected and gave our feedback. And since then, for many years, for the first 10, 12 years, every single year when they would produce a report on the violations of religious freedom in different countries, I would take their South Asia report every year and give a rebuttal. And nobody would, from our side, would taking it seriously because nobody would work so hard. So this this USCIRF, I don't know if anyone else who tracks this has actually gone to them. I have gone to their headquarters in Washington, D.C. I've had meetings with the commissioners. The commissioners of this are government appointed. They're salaried government employees. Each of them has a budget for hiring, interns and hiring researchers and so on. I have met the young gentleman from Pakistan in charge of the South Asia report. A young gentleman from Pakistan in charge of writing the South Asia report. I have cross-examined these people and said, can I have who gave you all this data? When you are saying that this happened to Christians and this happened here and there, it's all one-sided. Where is this data? It's not any court verdict in India. Where is it from? And they told me that these sources we cannot disclose because they'll get attacked, and so they're secret. So I said that according to the U.S. law, if somebody is accused of a crime and you are accusing my whole tradition of a crime, then the defendant has a right to cross-examine the witnesses. The defendant has a right to cross-examine the evidence. So I want to cross-examine the evidence. And I want to cross-examine whoever the witnesses are that gave you all this. And if you can't do it because of secrecy and all that, you can you can hide their voice and you can hide their face, but I want to be able to cross-examine them. And they were very stunned that an ordinary Indian would come in to this major institution of the United States government in Washington, D.C., sit in front of these mighty commissioners in charge of that, and give them this kind of rip. And I gave them my PowerPoints, I gave them handouts. I said, here is my rebuttal to what you are doing. In fact, I pointed out that in their report that year, they had misquoted the Constitution of India. They said that according to the Constitution is this, that, but that was not even so. I told them what the truth was. You see, the problem is so blatant that nobody from our side doing a point-by-point rebuttal to this whole Hinduphobia. So it's not, my friends, it is not about coining a term. You got to roll up your sleeves, go out and do all this hard work for 20, 30 years. You got to know the enemy very close. You get close to your friends, even closer to your enemies. And that's how you get to know them. So I funded Harvard. I funded Michael Witzel. I funded all those guys for a long time. And then I was privy to what's going on. I was privy to their meetings, how they give, how the whole politics inside the academy works. And I know that very well. So then I started looking at think tanks, American think tanks, and how they feed policymakers in the South Asia desk in Washington in the State Department. So I got to know those people. I visited the State Department. So I have physically gone and interacted in person and by emails and by phones with all sorts of institutions that are involved in this syndrome. And I don't know if anybody who's done that. So if it's not a matter of, who coined the word, I mean, that's a real insult to a serious researcher, because a serious researcher has a lot of work to do in gathering this data, connecting the dots, figuring out what's my counter thesis to it, finding resources from my tradition to counter them, going there, presenting them, even if I'm the only guy in the room. So then I discovered that there were these George Soros type people. That's another kind of institution. That's kind of a shadow institution, because they're not very, very open about it. But now it's not just George Soros, and he's not the worst guy. Now there's about a dozen others, and I'm writing about them in a forthcoming book. Media all over the place involved in this very Islamic left-wing alliance being nurtured. And then with the rise of BJP, it took another wave of another kind of lens, where they started saying that anybody like me who happens to be, talking like this must be a RSS or a BJP man, not realizing that I started this long before BJP guys knew about this problem, or RSS guys, long before they even cared about it, because they were just busy in their own world. And they jumped on the bandwagon only in recent times, because I was getting traction. And how did Indians and Hindus start discovering me? They started discovering me when the Westerners attacked me. When the Wendy Donigers of the world sent a whole lot of people to attack me, then it became, wow, he's taken seriously. He must be doing something that they don't like. So that's kind of the history of this. And there are two books. First, I started writing on Sulekha, which was around 2000, late 90s and 2000. Then I started writing in other places. And then these articles were summarized in a book called Invading the Sacred. Invading the Sacred came out in 2005. And this book came out because Martha Nussbaum wrote a book, she's a very big shot feminist in Chicago. And, you search Martha Nussbaum, she's a who's who all over the place. Martha Nussbaum wrote a book on this, Hindu fascism in America. And there were people reporting Hindu organizations to FBI that they are worse than the Muslim terrorists. They should also be monitored. Dinah Eck went to American Academy of Religion. She was head of Hinduism in Harvard. And she also said that, we are more monitoring Islamic terrorism. Why is nobody monitoring Hindu terror groups in America? All of that she did. So when Martha Nussbaum wrote her book on this subject, she devoted a chapter to me. I mean, I felt, my God, this is interesting. I'm worth a whole chapter as a target. So, none of those other people who are now big shots, who are claiming to be, they have their own channels and talking about they are the champions, fighting Hinduphobia. There are people in the US, there are people in India. It's easy to cut and paste, copy paste what has been written here. A whole vocabulary was introduced here, popularized and explained in detail. And then many years later, a sequel to that book, Academic Hinduphobia. Now, there's nothing more direct than the word academic Hinduphobia, and it talks about all this we are anti-Muslim, Sanghi, caste racism, rapist, sati, fascism, backward, anti-Dalit, saffron, right-wing extremism, oppression, violence, hegemonic, Hindu nationalist. These are all on the cover. These are all things, and you see that the person's voice, the person's face on the side. That's a person who's speaking all this stuff against us. So I put this all out, and chapter after chapter is all about what these guys are up to. So I have paid the price. I've stuck my neck out, and they're hounding me all the time. They're trying to bring me down. Maybe our people don't even close ranks and give me moral support sometimes. But I've been doing this for close to 30 years now. So this is sort of the background. Because you cannot fight something. You can put a band-aid here and fight a symptom there, but you cannot fight the disease unless you go into the root cause. And to go into the root cause, you got to understand what are the mechanisms by which it operates. So this is just a quick summary. And if you read some of these books and many others I've written, you'll get a lot of information on how this mechanism works, who funds it, why they fund it, what type of people they fund and what type of people they won't fund. What is the outcome that they are expecting to come out of this discourse research that they do? And then how it's turned into policy, how it goes into school textbooks, and so on. So now the latest thing about caste is race. And this critical race theory is now being applied to critical caste theory, is become a very serious problem. It's working its way, not only this conference, at Rutgers and other places, but also they're taking it to the US Congress. And the Democratic Party, unfortunately, has been infiltrated by a lot of very extreme left, a lot of Islamic influence, a lot of Pakistani influence, and things are not looking good for the Indian point of view. And, as far as I'm concerned, I'm 71 years old. How much can I go on fighting on my own? And so I am also, for the last year or two, sick and tired that our people haven't closed ranks and created a sustainable institution. And so I moved on to other topics. I'm writing about artificial intelligence. I'm going to write 20 more books on various topics. And this fight of Hinduphobia is kind of like a scattered, fragmented, everybody want to become important. And so that is how the fight has disintegrated and fragmented. But there is no cohesive ecosystem. Whenever some flare up happens like now, then people come all over the place and unite and want to fight back. When that flare up is over, people go back to life as usual. There is no permanent team. There's no permanent infrastructure, and so that is what I've tried to create, a think tank that is there, whether it's good times or bad times, but we ought to be studying all this on a regular basis. And when the Hindu gurus have told me, we don't do these things. We are gurus. We do the puja and we teach you Gyan and we teach you, Upanishads, and we don't worry about it. I tell them, listen, you are supposed to do Purva Paksha. Agreed? And nobody can say, no, we don't want to do Purva Paksha because that's how we teach Vedanta. We do Purva Paksha. And Purva Paksha means reversing the gaze, analyzing and studying the opposing side. So while Adi Shankara did Purva Paksha with, his opponents at that time, but today's opponents weren't there. They didn't even exist. So today you have to do Purva Paksha of today's opponents who are the Hinduphobics. And so it is part of your job as a serious scholar, as a serious acharya, to do Purva Paksha of Marxism, post-colonial studies, postmodernism, subaltern studies, on and on and on. And our people have not put that into the thought process in whether it is the Shankaracharya Mattas, whether it is other gurus, whether it is universities in India. We're not doing Purva Paksha of the Western thought or Purva Paksha of Chinese thought on our own terms. So this is a serious matter, and I'm delighted that you invited me. I will be happy to go further, take questions, and whatever you would like. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this background. I think one question that most people have asked me in the last few days is that this conference, proposed conference, which has got a lot of publicity, is actually directed at the present government. And so, therefore, one would have assumed that the Indian embassies and Indian officialdom would have taken this extremely seriously and perhaps raised it with the United States government. That this kind of thing then will is done. Then it can't be done between friendly countries. So, is there any contact of yours with the with the Indian embassy and Indian authorities? Well, number one. Number two, what is the attitude you think that we in India and perhaps those who are activists in the United States be taking towards a conference? I mean, anybody can hold a conference. We are not saying that don't hold a conference. But in terms of countering it, what is it that we should be doing?
Great questions. So the answer to the first question, whether the Indian government has done anything, the answer is no. The Indian government knows about it. A lot of people have written to the embassy, the culture people there, the Indian Council of Cultural Relations, which is headed by Sahasra Buddheji. Decent man,
Yeah.
good man, well-meaning man, but his organization is completely impotent, not doing anything.
Yes.
The
Yes.
Indian consulate here in New York, silent. So their attitude is, we'll keep quiet, and maybe somebody else like these guys will fight. Individual like me will do the fighting, and we're tired. I mean, we can only do so much without the support of the government. They're attacking RSS, and the
Yes.
RSS leaders should issue a statement. The RSS leaders should come on, or should demand time on American media to defend themselves. It should not be some low-level guys in their personal capacity. There are a lot of good people in their personal capacity trying to do the best. But as an institution, if they are being attacked and named, then they have to have an institutional representation to counter it. Whether it is legal, because there is defamation, whether it is public relations, whatever it is, I see zero representation from the RSS people. I also see gurus. I mean, I know somebody who's written and made phone calls to Baba Ramdev and to Jaggi Vasudev and to Sri Sri and Mata Amritanand Mai and Swami Narayan, all these people, Chinmay Mission, Ramakrishna Mission, you name it. They're very good organizations. I like what they're doing, but this is part of what they're supposed to do, because this is what the Mahabharata says. You got to go and defend your dharma, and this is the nexus of the Kurukshetra. It is no longer a small town in Haryana. The Kurukshetra is global. So wherever the fight flares up, you got to go and you got to defend yourself. So the people who are in power, who are the leaders of all these big institutions of our dharma, who take all the credit when credit is when they want to claim how great they are, when it comes to controversy, they run away. They don't want to get messed up in controversy other than some domestic Indian politics. So I'm very disappointed with that. Now, regarding what can the Indian government do? I think, first of all, I offered 20 years ago, and I've offered this many times since. I have a huge database tracking who's who on the other side, what they're up to, what is their thesis, and I'm happy to turn it over. But I want competent people on the team that I can coach and mentor and turn it over, and then they can continue with this. There needs to be a surveillance and monitoring of who these people are. After all, they're so public. Almost 1,000 people have signed in the various from the various academic institutions in India, in the United States, and elsewhere for this conference. So it's very clear what their positions are. I mean, you can go and study go to their websites, and they're very full of all this venom. Why isn't there a hard work? Why isn't there a cell? Because I cannot just keep doing this. Why isn't there a cell that's monitoring all this the way China monitors? And China, when they give visas to American scholars who go there to study China, they look up their track record. If their track record is anti-China, China-phobia, they don't let them. They give them hell and say, okay, you don't want to complain about our lack of freedom you go and do what you want, but we're not going to let you in. And when they go, they are the Americans who go feel very honored that China has allowed them in, and they better behave themselves. And the Chinese control all the journals of China studies. The most prestigious journals of China studies worldwide are controlled by their own people. And that's not the case here. Our discourse is controlled by foreigners and Indian sepoys who work for the foreigners, and the government does not have the courage, does not have the competence even. Neither the Ministry of Culture nor the HRD people nor the ICCR seem to have the wherewithal to understand the problem. So, the thing is that I'm also tired of giving all this stuff, and I've backed off and said, okay, RSS is attacked, let RSS defend themselves. BJP is attacked, let them defend themselves. Government of India is attacked, they've got an ambassador, they've got all these huge, highly funded, thousands of crores worth of infrastructure and all kind of budgets. Let them let them defend themselves, but they are not able to do it, and things are getting pretty bad now. So I don't know what the solution is, because the institutions are not doing their bit.
Now, you see, just taking that forward, when Narendra Modi was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, there was nothing in terms of conviction or any other. There were allegations about the Gujarat riots and Narendra Modi's involvement, but there was nothing by way of the Congress party, which was in power in the center, which even made him prima facie, like, for instance, I've got Sonia Gandhi on the National Herald on bail. Nothing of that kind. He was absolutely squeaky clean as far as the law was concerned. Yet, the United States government, on a recommendation of this religious institution that you mentioned, had cancelled his visa. Now, there are these people who are really terrible. Diana Ek is an example. There are others also. There's one, this lady who's seems to be masterminding it from Rutgers University. All these people, don't you think that a list of such people who have, shall I say, vulgarized the Hindu religion should be also subject to the same kind of treatment which the Americans give to Indians on much less ground? I mean, what they did to Narendra Modi is an example. So these scholars also, they shouldn't be allowed to come to India on a visa, or they should come and they should be followed around, or some restrictive way, some way to know that you are not welcome. Do you think that kind of thing needs to be done?
Sure. I mean, there has to be a quid pro quo. I believe in free speech. I don't want any restrictions. But one way you improve the flow of knowledge is that those who are blocking have to be blocked. If you block the blockers, if you censor the censors, okay, if they are initiating this one-sidedness and you call their bluff, we would not be blocking free speech. We would be actually enhancing free speech by pointing out their hypocrisy. Now, Dr. Swamy, you were teaching in Harvard, and then they suddenly decided not to allow you anymore. Your course was scheduled. It was there official for many, many years. Suddenly it was decided to cancel because some people raised a complaint that you had made a statement regarding some Muslim issue in India long ago, and that had no relevance to economics, which is what you're teaching. And in any case, academic freedom, which is being given to Audrey Truskay and all these other people, you also are entitled to your academic freedom, and that was denied. Now, there are many cases of that sort. We are going to, on my channel, we are going to interview a person on September 11, a lady in the United States, a Jewish person, a alumni of Rutgers, who was scheduled to give a talk which had nothing to do with any of these issues. And at the last minute, she was uninvited. Her talk was canceled because somebody complained that some couple of years earlier, she had made a remark about Muslims. And that talk of hers was not even recorded, so they didn't even have any evidence to that effect. They kind of fabricated, exaggerated, and she was uninvited. So I took her statement and sent it to the president of Rutgers, Professor Holloway. And I had several conversations, exchanged many emails with him. And, their attitude is like, oh, okay, we are withdrawing. The response was, we are withdrawing our name. We are telling them not to use our name, but, we cannot stop them to do what they want to. But in the case of this lady, she was removed. So there are many examples in the US academia of bigotry where the people who criticize and oppose the established prevailing what I call peer review cartel. I wrote this article many years ago. The peer review cartel, this business that everything must be peer reviewed. But who are the peers? Some people get to decide that I appoint you and you appoint me, and I'll appoint Ramesh, and you appoint one of my guys, and that's the peer group. It's that kind of a incestuous peer cartel that is the gatekeeper. And this type of a systematic study which I published a lot on this, needs to come out. More people need to read these kind of things. So rather than rediscovering slowly, a huge mountain of work has existed, but our people are not reading. Government is not taking action. Government has got strength, and government has got power, and there is precedence from all over the world. Russia won't allow this. China won't allow this. Many countries won't allow this sort of nonsense. India is sort of open territory. Anybody can come and create mischief.
Yeah. Well, let me add a point here before I ask my other colleagues to also, raise their questions. You said about free speech. In our constitution, Article 19 bracket 1 is the clause or the article which of the constitution which is about free speech, the fundamental right to free speech. But it also adds that it is subject to certain reasonable restrictions. And most important of all, it says it doesn't apply to foreigners. So if a foreign scholar is claiming that they have a right to free speech in India or about India, I think the government of India would be legally perfectly within its rights under the Constitution of India, as it's the same in the United States, to deny them entry into India, saying that you're an undesirable alien. And I think that's that kind of a list should be prepared, in my opinion. And I'll see all the people I know in the United States who are against these people and their version of fascism, where they just speak all these lies and try to block people. That such a list should be formed, and the Indian government should then tell them, sorry, you're an undesirable alien, we can't give you visa. And we certainly are not going to give you free speech rights, which are under the Constitution. That's only meant for Indians.
So even worse than that, we're actually giving them awards.
Yeah, that's right.
We've given this Padma Award to Sheldon Pollock, and they've given some annual Indology Award,
right.
President's Award to all kind of people.
Yeah.
And it seems like our people don't read. We are not like uneducated people. If somebody comes wearing a tilak and a dhoti and does namaskar, or some lady comes in a sari, we say, my God, this Gora person is respecting us. We ought to touch his feet. I mean, it's so stupid. Before I exposed Wendy Doniger, she was the darling of the major Hindu temples in Chicago. She was being invited as the keynote speaker on various events and given a lot of honorarium and huge standing ovations because she'd come in her Indian dress and do some chant one mantra or something. And our people were so easily mesmerized. And when I said, you got to look deeper than what this drama, you got to look deeper what she's up to, then they stopped, bringing her in. So where is the vigilance? We are a tradition of knowledge. The mandirs are supposed to be studying also. The acharyas and ashrams are supposed to study. The government is supposed to study. Where is the thinking machinery that is controlling, that is trying to do this control of our discourse? What about the HRD? What are they up to? And what is the ICCR? What are they up to? So I have very serious problems. It seems that when somebody gets appointed to ICCR in some international capacity, whether it's Nehru Center or some other center, or when somebody becomes a cultural attaché, it's sort of a glamour. You promote Bollywood and Indian food, and there's some fashion going on. All the goody things easy to do. I had a boss in my corporate career who used to tell his managers that you got to be tough, you make tough decisions. And he used to say that it's always fun to be Santa Claus at Christmas time and give bonuses. Very fun. But you guys don't want to reprimand and fire the guys. You got to, yes, you got to give bonuses to those who are performing very well, but those who are not, you got to fire them and get rid of them. And that you're afraid to do, that you shouldn't. So the same thing is here. Good stuff, positive stuff. Everybody want to come out and be the big, shot and be seen as a very positive person promoting Indian culture. But what about fighting the abuse? That is part of the territory.
Right. Well, I'm happy that Jagdish Shetty has also come back. First, I start with Ramesh. Do you want to go raise any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Rajiv ji, for that excellent speech. Because based on the responses that we are seeing from the viewers, it's been received very well. Rajiv ji, again, you have done an enormous amount of work in telling what the true Hindu history is. I mean, you've done so much of research in so many years. And Dr. Swamy had said earlier that we should actually rewrite our history books. Unfortunately, nothing is done, because what really hurts me or pains me is the amount of work that you've done is really not getting translated. And I understand even it does frustrate you, because it is there for the taking. You've offered it, and still the HRD or the Indian government has not taken up and corrected first the history. See, the thing is, yes, the current crop is not going to do what you're saying. Absolutely. At least the future generation should do. So, Dr. Swamy, what can we do to push this? Because the future generation should not consistently think that we are inferior. I mean, I can tell you, even as Rajivji clearly said, Hindus feel inferior here themselves. They're not proud to say that I'm a Hindu. Okay, what if I say that I'm a Hindu, am I being aggressive? That thought process is, being fed into this. And that's why, as Rajivji said, when Wendy comes, we see somebody else, Agora coming in, see, they have adopted our thing, but they don't adopt the same courage to say, okay, we have to stand for ourselves. So the first thing, do you think that the government should do something there?
Well, Rajiv will answer this, but let me just put in two words, edgewise, so to speak. I had said at the very beginning, when our government was formed in 2014, that create a textbook committee and make Rajiv the chairman of that. And it did go up the ladder to be considered. And somewhere people said, we have been in this for such a long time, we have been forgotten, and so on. And the whole thing got scuttled. Now, I would say about India, change does come, but it requires a lot of patience. And I think, it's not fair on Rajiv Malhotra to do it. It's for us to do it. And we are at it. And I'm 100% certain that this change, which has already come to this extent, that today there are people who used to despise the name Hindu are openly in the opposition saying, we are also Hindus, but not the kind of Hindus that RSS is or BJP is. I mean, this kind of differentiation has come. People go to Hindu festivals now, which they're amongst the politicians who never did when they were so-called secular. And secularism is not now something that is tom-tommed anymore. So I think let's not be completely disappointed. Yes, we are disappointed that nothing much has happened. But I know that in this country, you keep pushing, ultimately it does happen. And so I would like to, end it in an optimistic way. Of course, Rajiv can tell us exactly how he would like to see these changes being made. And then we'll ask Jagdish to, raise his questions and then take it from there.
So, my concern is that the discourse is now being used, whatever the discourse is, all its biases, the discourse is being used to train algorithms, because an algorithm has to be trained the way you train a child. When you educate a child, if you send him to a madrasa, the child will turn out one way. If you send him to a Catholic convent, he'll turn out another way. If you send him to a Maoist training camp, another way. If you send him to a Hindu pathshala, he'll turn out another way. So it depends on what kind of education the child is given. The same way the texts, the discourses fed into the machine learning for training the algorithms are actually very instrumental in deciding what the algorithms will do. So all of the social media is driven by algorithms, and the algorithms are driven by machine learning, and the machine learning is driven by various texts that are being used for training. And I see what they are. So, for example, Wikipedia is being used. For example, the whole university's American Ivy League output on humanities and social sciences is being scanned. It is being fed to the machine learning systems, and that's being used to train algorithms. So what I fear is that artificial intelligence is becoming a force multiplier against us, because artificial intelligence magnifies and amplifies the biases already there. So previously you needed human beings sitting around and biasing this and censoring that. Now, what's happening is your messages, how much you'll get a boost, who will get a boost, who will be blocked, who will be shadow banned on various kinds of media, whether it is audio, whether it is video, whether it is text. All this is algorithm driven, and we are not the ones who control the algorithms. They are not belonging to us. Those algorithms belong to the tech giants, who are mostly in the United States and many of them in China. The Chinese ones, we've sort of tried to get rid of them with some success, not completely. So I fear that this age of artificial intelligence driven discourse is going to become worse, and I've called this Breaking India 2.0. And I feel that the Breaking India is going to become more intense. So now they are watching through facial recognition, being fed into all the video cameras out there. They're watching who's who, where there's a farmer revolt, which are the farmers on this side or that side, who's talking to whom, who can be mobilized. So when there are riots, there is a role of social media as a vehicle. There is a role of social media. But remember that it is all very selective. While Trump got banned, not a single Taliban channel has been banned. I mean, it's very amazing. Not a single Taliban channel has been banned. They're all over the social media, and they're being boosted. They're being those things are being promoted. So who decides what is good discourse and what is bad discourse? Very, very strange. So this is a serious problem. It's a technological problem which is going to make things worse, and India is not in the driver's seat, because we are exporting technology manpower, but we don't own the intellectual property. So that's my prognosis, why I think I'm predicting, and nobody wants to hear this, that by the year 2030, by the end of this decade, India's sovereignty will be at serious risk from a combination of external threats, this whole China, Pakistan, Afghanistan kind of thing, and internal Breaking India Forces 2.0. Because we are not in control. We haven't even understood and diagnosed the problem. Niti Aayog don't want to hear me because I keep telling them all this. I'll tell you the silver lining is the military people in India really get it. It's the military people that I've given many workshops, private or off-camera workshops, and also some public discussions. They really understand the threats we are facing, both the Breaking India internal threats with all this social media manipulation, and the external threats from various enemies. The military understands it, and they want to know more about it, and they want to do something about it. But I don't see the rest of society really current with the state of the art.
Rajiv, a follow-up question. It's a brilliant thing, because feeding the AI engine the content, and it's just going to make assumptions because what you feel the algorithm is. But how does China or even the Islamic countries counter that? Because there's obviously content that are against them as well. So how does China fight against that AI engines not making assumptions in the wrong way?
I don't know if you read my book, but I'm going to show it here. My book on artificial intelligence. So this is a book I just came up with.
Okay.
Artificial intelligence and the future of power. 5 battlegrounds, and the battlegrounds include not only economics and all of that. It includes geopolitics and national security. So I've discussed all of this stuff. Okay. The short answer is that these algorithms, the people who control these algorithms, have been infiltrated by a whole lot of Islamic forces. You have Zuckerberg taking a position that on Facebook. He just changed it a few weeks ago under political pressure. But the position was that any post that questions, that suggests that China, the Wuhan lab may have been the origin of COVID-19, that is going to be blocked. So the question is, who are these guys to set policy on discourse? On the one hand, we are talking about open society and level playing field and intellectual freedom. On the other hand, it's all being controlled by algorithms, and these algorithms are, the policy of the algorithm is decided by these people. So China has got its own social media power, because they have algorithms and they have platforms. Maybe India doesn't allow them, but Chinese platforms are very big in the rest of the world. I mean, it's not just TikTok, these kind of things, but huge amount of platforms of China are multi-billion-dollar. Some companies of China worth hundreds of billions of dollars in this business are all over the world, and India doesn't have its footprint in this particular space. So we are behind.
Jagdish?
Yes, Rajivji and Dr. Swamy, it's actually very nice for our viewers as well as our members that both of you come together on such a topic. My question to Rajivji is, you mentioned about what's happening about the Indian groups and what's happening to these people who control them from India. My question is, have the common man, Indian or Hindus in the US and their groups, have they not realized the threat from this Hinduphobia which these universities and vested interests have been spreading? Can't they be mobilized under your leadership, Dr. Swamy's leadership, and other leaders who are there? Can't we mobilize them?
So you see, the sad reality is, let's take Rutgers as an example. 5,000, there's more than 5,000 Indian students in Rutgers. It's the largest ethnic minority, and most of those Indian students are Hindus. But a very small number of them are members of the Hindu Student Council, a few hundred. And they come for a samosa and chai at Diwali time and do some fireworks and crackers. And if you say there's a bhangra, they'll all come, or a Bollywood movie, they'll come. But you see, most of them are serious students. They come from medical school, engineering school, computer science, business school. I mean, they are professionals. Their parents send them and say, okay, you better get good grades, go make a good career. So in the quest for doing well for themselves, which Indians are doing very well, the pursuit of activism is not emphasized. It's not emphasized by the parents, and it's not they don't have the foundation. Nobody has coached them. I would like gurus to set up a branch in every campus. The gurus, Chinmay Mission should have a Chinmay Mission every college, like the Mormons do, like the church does, like the Muslims have imams coming and giving lectures on Friday to the students. We should, every one of Swami Narayan people should have, Jagi Vasudev, Sadhguru should have, he should take the top 50 campuses, and he should say on each of them, I'm going to have 1 or 2 events every week, and I will fund it. He's got the money, and we will appoint some people, and they will do this. So if you want to turn things around on campus, you cannot expect students to. They're just very fragile and innocent. You cannot expect students to sort of self-organize. Some adults with some deep pockets, some funding, some institutions have to come and do it for them. And even if the students got self-organized, in 3-4 years they'll graduate, they'll be gone, and you are back to square one looking for new students. The permanent faculty have to do something. A lot of the Islam activism and leftist activism comes from the brains, from the work of the faculty living in those universities. So they planted good faculty. These leftist and Islamic people have planted their ideological faculty on campuses, and that's why there are some hundreds of people signing up for this new conference that you're talking about. The Hindus exist. In a place like Rutgers, there are several hundred Indians who are mostly Hindus on faculty, but they're in medical school. I know somebody who says, I'm a mechanical engineer, I don't want to get involved, like that. So this is the problem of we are facing in getting these people organized. But slowly, there is awakening. Every time an event like this happens, it's an opportunity to wake up people, because that's when they wake up. They are waking up on this. It is too little, too late to do anything for this time. Hopefully, this traction will not be lost. It will be permanent. Hopefully, we will be better prepared for the next time.
Yeah, I think the Indian students and professionals did do something on the textbook, for example, in California.
Yes.
And it's just an example. I think that kind of thing needs to spread. Yeah. Yeah,
Jagdish, you can
Ramesh,
conclude. No, sir, that's it. I mean, we have pretty much covered most of the topic, and it's a fascinating discussion.
9 o'clock. Yeah.
Correct. So it's
Uh,
fascinating discussion. So
So
Jagdish, go
Jagdish,
ahead.
you want to conclude?
Yes. Thank you, Rajiv Malhotra ji and Dr. Subramanian Swamy, for this very interesting discussion on the Hinduphobia in the US universities and campuses. Today was our 125th episode of Gyan Ganga Words of Wisdom. We had started this program on during the lockdown virtually within weeks or 1 or 2 weeks on the 2nd of April 2020, and it was a daily program, and we had the privilege of even hosting Rajiv Malhotra ji in one of our programs, milestone program. And today is the 125th episode. Earlier on, it was a daily program. Then we converted it into a weekly program. Then Dr. Swamy even did Saturday shows like legal words of wisdom, Nyay Gyan Ganga, and economic words of wisdom, Arth Gyan Ganga, on Saturdays to educate our viewers. Actually, our motto of Virat Hindustan Sangam, and where Rajiv Malhotra ji has been kind enough in the past in physical conferences to come and guide and motivate our members, is basically to educate and empower. And today was one such discussion. But we are happy to note that our program is watched in 125 plus countries across the globe. This is not just a marketing talk, but based on statistics which we have obtained from our social media channels and other records. And we have reached 200 million viewers for this regular program. And what we started as a subscriber for YouTube of Virat Hindustan Sangam, it has reached 127,000 subscribers across the globe. So we thank our viewers for this. I have to also thank my today's co-host Ramesh Swamy for his constant support for putting this program together, and our technical team led by Ashish Shetty, Tejas Navalgul, Gadgi Rakesh, Ishwar Iyer, Swaminathan, Vishal Mehta, and this time our Srikant Patil from Thane also helped us in our publicity and our various language thing. So it's always a pleasure to host Rajiv Malhotra ji, and I wish and hope in future Dr. Swamy and Rajiv ji do many programs on this type of issues, and also guide our members and audience across the globe on this important development. So with this, it is thanking you all and wishing you good night in some parts of the world. Some parts of the world it's good afternoon and good evening or perhaps good morning. But Ramesh Swamy has some information on some of our social media platforms. So with that, he will give you some information and then we will end the show.
Okay, thank you, Jagdish. So with today we have also started Telegram channel for Dr. Swamy. You can go look for Dr. Swamy's Telegram channel. We have, as soon as we announced it, we have 5,000 people who have joined it. So we'll have more people joining. See, the goal is more to spread as much as information possible because as we move forward, we need to keep up with the times. We started only with YouTube, then we expanded to 8 channels. Now we are trying to adapt as soon as possible, as much as possible. As we say, the key point is when Dr. Swamy and people like Rajiv ji who have spent so much of time before, when they come to the program, please don't think that they're just coming here and saying things. Okay, Rajiv ji is preparing for 3-4 days. Dr. Swamy sits down and prepares all these programs. So please try to take this spread with everybody, because what we are sharing here is very crucial, and it is important that you share, spread, and make sure everybody is aware. I mean, Rajiv ji has written enormous amount of books. Please share them. You can see them on Amazon. Dr. Swamy has written books extensively on these subjects. It's very important that the viewers learn from such stalwarts and see what we could do best to, it's our future, right? I mean, they have done enough amount of foundation and work for us. We have to take this forward. So that's very important that I just wanted to share. Again, as I said, podcast, as I said earlier, you as soon as this program's over, we upload it on Apple, Google, and Spotify podcast. You can listen to it later as well. Jagdish, we can conclude after this. Thank you, viewers. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, and
Thank
dhanyavad.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.